Thousands of years before the foundation of the Empire or Cathay, even before the coming of chaos, there was an even mightier empire, the Karak that reaches its pinnacle during the golden age of the dwarf. However, in recent times, with a few remaining Karaks to remember the proud race, their legacy is one of decadence and struggling, as are many in this setting, but is also one of persistence and defiance against impossible odds, and few locations reflect this better than the obscure war for Vala Asriungol or Karak Eight Peaks. The ancient hold was once one of the brightest jewels of the everlasting realms and the home of the proud dwarves of Clan Angrund. However, the great kingdom was lost during the Goblin Wars and was occupied by the night goblins of the Shattered Moon and the rat men of Clan Morse. Centuries later, Belegar Ironhammer, the rightful heir, launched an expedition to reclaim the mountain, revolving the conflict into a three-way struggle against both the Groby and the Thakoraki, one that may have lasted until the end of times. Nevertheless, an alliance between goblins and the Skavens set up an assault against their bearded foes. The dwarves hold their ground against this dark alliance with all their steel, gunpowder and runic might, yet for every dwarven warrior an unending myriad of enemies seem to spawn without cease. Furthermore, the enemy brought with themselves warped inventions and horrific monstrosities. In time, the dwarven line was reduced to a few resistant pockets that were assailed without mercy. Belegar, the rightful king, fought back the onslaught with all his might. Sadly, the situation became clear and the true king made the regrettable decision of his ancestors once more. They would abandon Karak Eight Peaks. When news reached High King Thorgrim Grudgebearer, he was so enraged by the loss of the mountain once again that he decreed that if Belegar persists to reclaim the lost Karak, he will have to do so without aid. And thus our story begins. Back in our starting position, our priority now is to gather enough force to enact our reclamation. For that, we must retake the province of the Bolts. Meanwhile, I will detail the special rules for this campaign. This is essentially a two-sided campaign based on if we hold Karak Eight Peaks, which is our main goal. We must also put an end to Skorsniks and Quick factions, settling the legendary grudge, and performing a special task once this has been completed. Until the reclamation with the Sacred Hold, we will have to carry on the restrictions imposed by the High King. That would be no diplomatic assistance of any kind and the impossibility of raising more than one army. The loss of our precarious yet firm position on Karak Eight Peaks has also diminished our numerous reclamation. For that, no Tier 3 or Longbeards will join us in this new attempt to reclaim the mountain. However, regiments of renown and grudge units are exempt from these restrictions. Moreover, we must always field a designated subterranean detachments, regardless of whether we hold the Eight Peaks. These detachments consist of at least 4 units of miners of any kind, 2 of which may be replaceable by 2 units of iron breakers, 2 rangers of any kind, and 2 bolt throwers. After the reclamation of the whole province, we begin preparations to return to our ancestral home when sudden news arrived. It seems that after the dwarf's exile, Skorsnik has gathered his most zealous followers to strike the scheme by surprise. The ratmen were butchered and driven out completely from Karak Eight Peaks, leaving Skorsnik as supreme ruler of the mountain. His triumph, however, was short-lived, for the betrayer was betrayed. An unknown Urg rebelled against the Groby Lord, rallied a crashing force that cut his army to pieces. Skorsnik himself barely escaped, retreating north. For the first time in centuries, the mountain is in prime position to be taken. from whoever reached it first. While establishing the best course to reach the mountain, we received word of a nearby orc clan that had defiled the names of the ancestor gods. Thus, we settled to strike two blows at once, punishing the blasphemous greenskins while carving a route through Blackfire Pass into the Badlands and then heading south to the mountainside. When we finally reached the falls of the mountain, the situation presented was dire to say the least. The rebellious orcs still held a strong position in the province, and there was a noticeable Skaven presence in the south. We were outnumbered yet undaunted. Instead of retreating, we pushed through the province, biding our time. Then, maybe as an answer to our needs, maybe as the final part of a long-established plan, a small throng presented itself before the true king. Our most recent deeds and overall cause had spread across dwarvenkind, and many came to join the quest for vengeance and reclamation. With new allies, we advanced in Valaya's sorrow. Once reclaimed, some of the volunteers were welcomed into our ranks, and plans for the next march began. While preparations were being taken, the ineptitude of the Skaven gave us a chance to intercept Squeak's own army, a golden opportunity that we wouldn't let pass. The Skaven faced us with massive numbers, withering our forces with subterranean attacks and artillery bombardment, while we closed distance. When we reached the ranks, we made wise use of our heroes, using them as the spearhead of our assault, while we systematically cut the ranks with our blasting charges and our newly acquired iron drakes. The battle soon descended into chaos. Even our rangers got trapped in melee, but we managed to relieve them and even reach their catapults. When their elite units broke, the battle was effectively won. Sadly, Quick soured our victory by slipping through our fingers. Next time we will take care of him for sure. With Skaven interference removed, we turn to our true goal. Reinforced by the Grudge army, we will retake the mountain once and for all. Before any advance was made, we wore down the fortress's defenses using the bolt throwers. The white forces of the orcs were waiting for us at the gates, letting our reinforcements to storm the fortress rearguard unopposed. When the towers fell and the gates were broken, fire and fury signed up the beginning of the real fight. The orcs fought for a fortress while the dwarves fought for their home. Even when the enemy put up a firm resistance, it was nothing compared to their relentless determination. When the main forces at the walls routed, the remaining pockets of resistance fled. With the battle won, Belegar Ironhammer, true king of the Queen of the Silver Depths, renewed his kingship once before his throne and his ancestors. Belegar has become the sole ruler of Karak Eight Peaks, yet he knows that conquering the fortress was just the first step. Clan Moors remain the most concerning menace, but the remaining rebellious orcs must also be dealt with. We taken down the remaining Skaven army in the province and made camp in Valaya's sorrow. The orcs then decided to do the work for us, launching themselves against our armies. We deal with them, though not without losses. While we raised a second army to cover the fallen, we sought to improve Belegar's gears with ancient relics.
Yes, my king, today is a great day. Today we kill orcs. Today is vengeance. Even now a throng from Karak approaches the green filth from the rear. We are honored to drink the orcs from the front. Let them face our might. Let them see what Darwi of the Angrund clan are made of! The lost vault of Angrund is within reach. Are we going to let these trespassers get away with their sneaky shenanigans? Do we let them steal the treasure and valuables which belong to the Angrund clan by right? No! We do not! Let the grudge be settled. Let vengeance begin!
With artifacts in hand and a fresh army ready, we marched south to fight the Ratmen. During our preparations, Moors had managed to lure a second clan of Pekoraki that threatened to attack us from behind if we ventured too far south. We split our forces in response. Belegar and the Grudge army closed in on the Skaven, while the second force reclaimed lost ground. The Skaven retaliated but were crushed thoroughly. With no armies left, the path was clear for our second lord to clean up their territory, leaving Clan Moors to Belegar. The culmination of our offensive came when we managed to corner Quick's army and enact retribution upon the hated Pekoraki. This time, he will not escape. The head taker met its end with a humiliating defeat, worthy of remembrance only to settle the grudge given to him across the years. The Skaven lord tried a desperate maneuver, engulfing our throne by splitting his army in two. We waste no time on blocking the flanking army with our hammerers and tear it down with our iron drakes. Meanwhile, our lords and miners took quick care of Quick's main force, and then the moment of vengeance fell upon the head taker. As promised, we made sure he did not leave the battlefield alive. Once dealt with, the remaining Ratman forces scattered across the Badlands or were swiftly dealt with. With Clan Moors defeated, we finally took a breath. Next would be Skorsnik. But then Trench decided to burn down our westernmost settlement. So we mobilized, struck his main force down, and after countering an ambush, the armies of Clan Rictus were no more. Fortunately, by reclaiming the ancestral territory of the region, we established a path that will lead us north and face Skorsnik by entering through the Dark Lands. Nevertheless, while we were dealing with the last remnants of Clan Rictus, word arrived of Skorsnik's demise at the hand of the Slayer King. Though Belegar would have preferred to be the one to destroy that despicable grubby, the grudge was settled regardless. The kingdom of Karak Eight Peaks began anew. To celebrate the rebirth of the kingdom, we traveled west once more to settle a long-standing grudge, one that dated back millennia to the last moments of the legendary War of Vengeance. During the centuries that weakened both races, the forest of Valour became a contested passage for dwarves marching west. Their landscape was reduced to a husk of the once arrogant race that populated it. However, unbeknownst to the Dawi, a group of Elvi had renounced the throne of Uthwan and made the forest their sacred home. They viewed the trespassing dwarves, who had no love or care for trees, as invaders that had to be expelled, and they did not stand alone. The forest itself rose against the outsiders with every sprout, branch, and tree it could summon. The unexpected dwarves were easy prey for the deceitful elves. This marked centuries of bitterness between the newly established wood elves and treemen of Valour and the Dawi of the Grey Mountains. Warriors or lumberjacks, none were spared, and few survived the ambushes of the now Wichelgi. Perhaps they felt justified, see themselves as trapped in a war no alien to them, and no one understands the desire to defend one's home better than a dwarf. But it does not matter. What matters is who they wronged that day and who have they been wronging ever since. When we finally arrived at the outskirts of the forest, the situation was dire for the Wichelgi. Another clan of Pekoraki had gotten ahead of us and was already raising the forest. This made no difference to the dwarves. They would cleanse the forest altogether, and if they could defeat both elves and Skaven at the same time, all the better. The Skaven were the first to be dealt with, and once they were scattered, Belegar turned to confront the Gutelgi king himself. It is known that fighting the Wood Elves on their own forest is borderline suicidal. However, with the diminished forces of the elves and a carefully planned set of actions, we strike their groves head-on. Firstly, we made use of our bolt throwers and rangers to pick off any Gutelgi caught in the open. But most importantly, we were able to use the forest itself to bypass their watch and strike with devastating results. They did not realize the surrounding maneuver until it was too late. In mere minutes, their entire outer defenses crumbled, and the elves were forced to retreat into their inner defenses. The elves defended their home as two dwarves would, paying with blood for every inch of land, but it was not enough. In the end, the King of the Woods stood alone and died alone. After that, we conquered the last elven strongholds in Valour. With complete control of the forest, only a few rogue armies separated us from fulfillment. However, a couple of setbacks drifted us away from our destiny. First, a Skaven resurgence from the south, taking multiple settlements before they were stopped and driven out once more. But by that time, the three men had regrouped around Durthu and pushed through the north, and they brought allies with them. Not wanting to extend the war against the Angi, we made use of our latest conquest to turn human interference aside by returning the castle of Carcassonne to Bretonnian hands. Without the manglings involved, we entered Valour for the last time, and when the Oak Father himself appeared in scene, we knew this was our chance to end the conflict for good. Fighting Durthu and fighting the forest was all the same. The dwarves advanced as the force of nature stormed against them, yet their resolve did not waver. Belegar engaged the oldest of the three men personally. The Wood Elves tested their fey magic against dwarven runic steel in a struggle that seemed endless. Then Durthu was cut down alongside his fairy witch. Then the battle was decided. Without Durthu, the conquest of Valour was as good as done. One by one, the reclaimed strongholds of the Good Elves fell again. With the demise of their lords and the subjugation of the entire forest, we were able to settle a long-standing grudge, yet rest was far from Belegar's mind. In the days that followed the destruction of Valour, the forces of Clan Skyer were cornered and seemingly destroyed on Stalia. These lands were restored to their rightful owners, and with the construction of a lumber camp where once stood the sacred Oak of Ages, Belegar finalized preparations and moved his throne to its rightful place. Karak Eight Peaks was closer to be the jewel of the past and stood as the heart of a prosperous dwarven kingdom. Yet threats still loomed from the south through the land of the dead and from the east, but that is a story for another day.